Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So in this video, we are going to see what useState hooks are and why they are called as the heart of every React application. Hooks are a new addition to React 16.8. They let you use state and other React features without writing a class. useState is a built-in React hook that lets you use states in a functional components. It allows you to have state variables in functional components. You pass the initial state to this function and it returns a variable with the current state value and another function to update this value. Initially, that is before the addition of hooks in React, we could manage state only in class components. But with the addition of hooks in React 16.8, we can manage state even in functional components. Imagine a counter component where when you hit the plus button, the value goes up, and when you hit the minus, the value goes down. And to keep track of the counter value, we use state. We can store anything inside of state. We can store numbers, arrays, string, objects, etc. So let's go ahead and see how we can actually implement state inside of React.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a p tag which will show the count value. Also, I'm going to add two buttons which I'm going to use for incrementing and decrementing the count value. The typical way of doing is by creating a count value and simply initializing it with 0. So what I want is every time I click on this minus button, I want to decrement this count value, and similarly for like this plus button, I want to increment this count value. So for that I'm going to create two functions. So these are ES6 arrow functions. I'm going to use for incrementing the count value and decrementing the count value. Similarly for decrement, I'm going to copy it and just change the value. Now let's say on click, decrement, let's save it. So as you can see on my screen, currently we have this count value which is 0, that is the default value. We have two buttons that are the plus and the minus buttons. So every time I click on the plus button, nothing is happening with the count value. Similarly, when I click on the minus button, the count value still remains the 0. So basically what's happening is React is not re-rendering this page. So we cannot simply declare a variable like this and expect React to re-render the page every time we click on the button. What we need to do is we need to use useState. Let's do it in the right way now. So this is array structuring. So just set down count, useState. And I'm going to initialize it with the initial value that is 0. We can add any values, we can add strings, we can pass arrays, we can pass objects. Depending upon the kind of situation that we are tackling, we can pass those as initial values. Let's import useState. This count is basically a variable which is storing a current count value. The setCount is a function which basically helps us in modifying the count value. This not only helps us in modifying the value, but also every time this setCount function is called, React re-renders the page. Basically React grabs the current count value and it compares the count value that is present on the screen using the virtual DOM, and then it updates the web page and returns the new page with the updated value. So basically every time this setCount function is called, React re-renders the page with the updated values. So now let's update the count values the right way. The setCount function, I'm going to pass count plus 1. Similarly, for decrementing in the setCount function, I'm going to pass count minus 1. Let's save it. So as you can see, every time I click on the plus button now, the count value increases by 1. Similarly, whenever I click on the minus button, the count value decreases by 1. So what's happening is, like every time I click on this plus button, this increment function is being called, which then calls the setCount function, where the React now grabs the count value that is being like current count value, and then it's the actual count value that is present on the screen using the virtual DOM, and then does the updated web page with the new count value. Also, whenever I refresh this page, you will see that the count value is now set to default value, that is the count value is lost. So basically the state value is not persistent. every time the user leaves the web page or he refreshes the web page, the count value will be lost. Although we can make it persistent by fetching it from the local storage or retrieving it from the database, but currently we're not doing it here. We'll see that in future lessons. Another thing that you should keep in mind that when we are working with multiple set count functions, like when we are calling multiple set count functions in our app component, basically, they are asynchronous, but they might not sync together properly. For example, if I call two set count functions, passing count plus 1, let's save it. So what should be the expected output? What should be your expected output? Basically, it should update the count value by 2 because I'm calling the particular function twice. But as you can see, it's still updating the count value by 1. So why is this happening? Basically, every time I call this set count function, it's using the same count variable for updating value. For example, current count value was 0, so it's using 0 plus 1 for updating count value. Here also it's using the same 0 plus 1 for updating value, and that is why it's not being able to update the count value by 2. So there's another way. We pass another function inside the set count function, and we pass the previous value inside this. And now if I decrement this previous value by -1, if I'm gonna call this twice, now you will see that every time I'm clicking on the minus button, the count value decreases by -2. So now what's happening is decrementing the previous value. For example, if the current value is 0 and it decremented it by -1, it becomes -1. But when the next set count function is called, it's using -1 as the previous count value and it's decrementing that value. That is why now it's decrementing it by -1. We can do it for the increment also, and then that will be a much better way for incrementing or decrementing the count values.
Now your task is to build your own counter component where you can increment and decrement the counter value and also change the color of the title whenever hovered. Also, I would recommend you to go through the React docs and read about the useState hook. In the next video, we are going to discuss about another very important hook of React, which is the useEffect hook. Till then, bye bye, take care.